Hello and good morning to everyone. Welcome to your English Literature live class. The chapter which we are going to do today is chapter number 17, the three questions, which is given on page number 141, right? So this is story, The Three Questions. It has been written by Leo Tolstoy. He's a very famous writer. In this story, there's a king who is longing to get the answers to three questions which will enlighten him, okay, he thinks, he believes that if he knows the answer to these three questions, then he will be able to rule his kingdom in a better way, and then he will never get defeated. That is what he believes. All right, we will for in order to know the answers to this question, he calls all the learned men and all the wise men from his kingdom, and he seeks the answer. But none of them could satisfy his query, because he got all the different answers, right? So all those answers couldn't satisfy the king. He then goes on to seek his answers, and he plans to meet a hermit. Okay, is hermit going will hermit be able to satisfy the king's questions? Okay, what all answers is hermit going to give to his questions? This we are going to deal, or this we will be knowing in as we read the story. Okay, so let us start reading the chapter, page number 141. Let us read the introduction of the story. The Three Questions is a short story by Leo Tolstoy, first published in 1885 as a part of the collection What Men Live By and Other Tales. The story takes the form of a parable with a moral lesson. The story is about a king who wants to find the answers to what he considers the three most important questions in life. In the end, it teaches us that the three most important things are to make most of the present moment, to always value the people who are with you. The most important work is helping the one in need. So, as I have already told you, this story has been written by Leo Tolstoy. Okay, and it was first published when in 1885 as a part of, there was a collection, What Men Live By and Other Tales. Okay, so this story was the part of that collection only. It is a form of parable. Now parable, it is a short story that teaches us a lesson. Okay, the story which gives a moral lesson, that is known as a parable. All right, so we will also see the moral lessons. Okay, the three answers which are there to the three questions, they are sort of moral lessons only, that we will also learn and we can also apply in our lives. All right, so I already told you, there's a king. Okay, he wants to find his answers, and in the end, he knows that the three most important things are that we should live in the present moment. We should utilize the present moment to its fullest, right? The moment which you are in, you should make the best use of that moment. One should make the best use of the present moment. This is the one thing which we are going to learn, which this story teaches us. The other thing is, we should always value the people who are with us right now. Okay, in the present moment, the person who is with you, okay, you should always value that person the most. All right, and the third thing which this story teaches us is that what is the most important thing to do, what is the most important business for us to do, is to help the one in need. Okay, we should help the ones in need, or needy people, we should help the needy people. All right, so these are the three lessons which the story teaches us. So let us start reading the first paragraph. It once occurred to a certain king that if he always knew the right time to begin everything, if he knew who were the right people to listen to and whom to avoid, and above all, if he always knew what was the most important thing to do, he would never fail in anything he might undertake. So, the king was there, and he sort of thought, he speculated that if he knew these three things, what are the three things? That if he knew the right time to begin everything, okay, the correct time for a work to be done, or a work to start with, okay, and if he knew who are the right people to listen to, that who are the people who can give him give good advice, and who are the people whom he should avoid, okay. And the third one is, if he knew what is the most important thing to do, what he should do, what which work should he give preference to, right? So he wanted to know all these three things, okay. The right time to begin everything, the right person to listen to or to talk to, and the third one is the most important thing to do. All right. And if he knew all these three things, what would happen? He would never fail in life. This is what the king believed, right? If he knew the answers to these three questions, then he thought that he would never be able to, he would never fail in life. He would never fail in any of the tasks he would undertake, right? And this thought, having occurred to him, he had it proclaimed throughout his kingdom that he would give a great reward to anyone who would teach him what was the right time for every action, and who are the most necessary people, and how he might know what was the most important thing to do. Now, when this thought came across king's mind, what did he do? He made an announcement in the whole of his kingdom, throughout his kingdom, that whoever is going to tell him to give the answers to these questions, to the questions of the king, that person is going to be rewarded, okay. And he is going, the king would be rewarding the person who would be answering his questions. All right. And again, he made the announcement for all the three questions. That is the right time to begin anything, the right people, the most important people, and the most important thing to do. Okay. The second question is the most necessary people, and the right people to listen to. That is the same thing. Okay. We saw in the first paragraph that the second question was if he knew who were the right people to listen to, and in the second paragraph it is written who are the most necessary people. So this is one and the same thing. All right, don't get confused. Next, let us read further. Many learned men came to the king, but they all answered his questions differently. So now, when these questions were published in the public, okay. So many learned men, they thought that they would be able to give the answers and they would get the reward. So they came to the king and they tried to answer his questions, but all the answers were different from each other. There was nothing in common. All right. In reply to the first question, some said that to know the right time for every action, one must draw up in advance a table of days, months, and years, and must live strictly according to it. Only thus, said they, could everything be done at its proper time. Others declared that it was impossible to decide beforehand the right time for every action, but that, not letting oneself be absorbed in idle pastimes, one should always attend to all that was going on and then do what was most needful. Now, in this paragraph, the learned men have come, okay, and they are trying to give the answers to the king's first question. That is, what was the first question? What is the right time to begin anything? Okay, what was the right time for any action, for every action? So they said, the learned men, they replied that one should always prepare a chart, okay, or a timetable. Only then one will be able to follow it or do the work properly, because if you have all the work sorted and if you allot the time every work, then one will be able to do the work properly and all the works would be executed at the proper time. So this was one answer given by some of the people. Okay. And also they said that, others said that it is impossible to allot, to decide that what is the right time to do anything, to perform any action. But in order to avoid laziness, one should not be involved in lazy pastime. That means one should not sit idly. Idly means lazy. Okay, not doing anything, right? Being lazy. So one should, in order to avoid that idle pastime, what should one do? One should just keep a tab on every action that is going on at that present time, and then decide what is the most and decide the priority of the work, okay, at that time only. And then one should pick up the work that is the most important work out of all the works which are there, which are going on around. And in that way we can do, we can sort the works. All right, whatever tasks we have undertaken, we should give the preference, we should put them in order, and then we should perform the task. That would be the better way to do the work at the perfect time. Now further, others again said that however attentive the king might be to what was going on, it was impossible for one man to decide correctly the right time for every action. So there was a contradiction. Okay, one lot of people said that the king should keep a look, uh, observe keenly all the tasks which have to be performed. But the other said that no matter how much the king is attentive, he will never be able to make out, it is really impossible for a man to decide correctly that what is the right time for every action. We cannot decide that what is the right time for every action. So there was a conflict between the learned men, among the learned men. All right, but that he should have a council of wise men. So they came up with an idea that it is impossible, it is not, it is really difficult for one man to decide what is the correct time for performing any action. So he should have what? He should have a council of wise men. There should be a group of wise men, okay, who will decide on his behalf and who would help him to fix the proper time for everything. Okay, so the council of men, what they would do, they would in play in on behalf of king, they would have this task arranged, and they would decide that what is the proper time for performing which task. All right, so let us read further. Equally various were the answers to the second question. Okay, so the first question is done, they all gave different answers, and there was no unanimity in the answers. All right, equally various were the answers to the second question. Some said the people the thing most needed were his counselors. So the what was the second question? That what who are the most important person? Who are the most important people? All right, whom the king should pay attention to. So they said that some of them said that the most important people are the counselors. Okay, one who give the group of wise men who would give the advice to the king. So they are the counselors. Others said the priests are the most important people. Then some others said doctors, while some said the warriors were the most necessary. So you see, they all have different answers, and they are not agreeing to each other. Okay, there's a conflict. Now comes the third question. What was the third question? That is the most important business, the most important occupation, or the most important work to do. Okay, so to the third question, as to what was the most important occupation, some replied that the most important thing uh, in the world was science. Others said it was a skill in warfare, and others again that it was religious worship. So what are the three? What are the three different answers given by the wise men, the learned men? That the most important thing in the world is science. Okay, science is very important. Said, while others said that is skill in warfare, because in olden times it was very important to be skilled in warfare, because the kings used to have a lot of wars, right? So they said that skill in warfare is very important, while others said no, religious worship is very important, because ultimately god is going to help us out. All right, so these three things they mentioned as the most important thing. So now, all the answers being different, the king agreed with none of them and gave the reward to none. But still wishing to find the right answers to his questions, he decided to consult a hermit, widely renowned for his wisdom. Now what happened that the king was seeking for perfect three answers, but what did he realize, what did he observe, or what did happen, that all the answers, all the learned men who had come, they had conflict among themselves only. They could not reach to one particular answer. And so when you have different answers, how could you come to one uh, one answer which would, how we cannot decide one answer or the correct answer. So the king was also confused. Okay, the answers were very different, and there were two they were varying a lot. All right, so they were very different from each other, so the king cannot could not draw up a conclusion. So he thought that so all the answers could not satisfy him, and therefore none of the learned men got rewarded. But the king obviously wanted to know the answers of his questions. So he thought that a hermit would be the best person to tell him or to answer his questions. Now, who a hermit is? Hermit is a sage, okay, who has forsaken every all the worldly affairs, and who moves to the forest, to the woods, and live a very simple life. All right, lives a very simple life. That is a hermit. So he thought that hermit would be able to answer his questions. Okay, and he goes to the hermit. That hermit was known. That hermit was known, and he was widely popular for his wisdom. Okay, it is written over here, widely renowned. Renowned means popular, famous, known. All right, so he was widely known for his wisdom. So this was the basic quality of the hermit. Um, all right, so this is it. Next, let us see. The hermit lived in a wood which he never quitted. Okay, he was living in a wood and he never left that wood. He always used to be there in the woods, and he received none but common folk. What does this mean? He never entertained any rich guest. Okay, so he always, his doors were only and only open for the ordinary people. He wanted to meet, wanted to see only the ordinary people. Okay, so here it is written, he received none but common folk. That means he entertained nobody except for the ordinary people, common men, common people. Understood this much? So the king put on simple clothes, and before reaching the hermit's cell, dismounted from his horse, and leaving his bodyguard behind, who went on alone. So it is but obvious, because the hermit would only see the ordinary people. So the king, he changed his clothes. Okay, he put on simple clothes, and he left his bodyguards behind, and he came down from his horse. He went walking to the hermit's hut. When the king approached, the hermit was digging the ground in front of his hut. Seeing the king, he greeted him and went on digging. The hermit was frail and weak, and each time he stuck his spade into the ground and turned a little earth, he breathed heavily. Now, when the king reached hermit's place, what was hermit doing? He was digging the earth. That means digging the ground. Here, earth means ground. All right, he was taking the soil out. Okay, so when he saw the king, he greeted him, and then he continued his work. All right, the hermit, what was the condition of hermit? He was very frail, he was very weak, very delicate, and each time he stuck his spade into the ground and turned a little earth, he breathed heavily. So this shows how weak the hermit was, because every time with each strike he was of his spade, he was breathing heavily. Spade is the tool, it is used to dig the ground. All right, spade. Now the king went up to him and said, I have come to you, wise hermit, to ask you to answer three questions. How can I learn to do the right thing at the right time? Who are the people I most need? And to whom should I, therefore, pay more attention than to the rest? And the last one, what affairs are the most important and need my first attention? So these are the three questions he he told these three questions. He put forward his three questions to the hermit. Okay, the same three questions. Now the hermit listened to the king but answered nothing. He just spat on his hand and recommenced digging. So the hermit, he listened to what the king said, but then he didn't react at all. He didn't say anything. He just spat. Spat is the past tense of spit. All right, you know what spitting is. He spat on his hand and recommenced digging. That means he listened to what the king said, but then what happened? He did not react. He did not say anything. He did not answer him. And what did he do? He just spat on his hand in order to create friction so that the spade doesn't slip much. All right. And he recommenced digging. That means he started digging again. Recommenced. Commence means to start, and recommence means to restart. All right. So you can just underline recommenced and write down restart. So he restarted digging. You are tired, said the king. Let me take the spade and work a while for you. So he offered some help to the hermit, seeing his condition, seeing that the hermit is really weak and he's going breathless with each strike of the spade. So he thought that he should pick up his work and do a little bit of his work and allow him to take some rest. Thank you, said the hermit, and giving the spade to the king, he sat down on the ground. So the hermit gave the spade to him, and while he took some rest. When he had dug two beds, now who is digging? The king. Okay. When he had dug two beds, the king stopped and repeated his question. The hermit again gave no answers, but rose, stretched out his hand for the spade, and said, now rest a while and let me work a bit. But the king did not give him the spade and continued to dig. 1 hour passed, and another. The sun began to sink behind the trees, and the king at last stuck the spade into the ground and said, I came to you, wise man, for an answer to my question. If you can give me none, tell me so, and I will return home. So now what happens? The king is digging the earth, and then while digging, he again puts up his questions and he again asks the hermit to give the answer. But again, hermit is not giving any answer. Hermit again does not give any answer, and instead what does he do? He rises up, gets up, and he stretches his hand to ask for the spade, and he says that now you take some rest. The hermit says that the hermit says that the king should take some rest, and now he will do his work again. The hermit would again start digging. But again, the king did not give him the spade. He said he continued digging, but at last, what happens? He dug for whole of the day because the sun began to sink. It has been written, right? The sun began to sink. That means the king was there till evening. All right, he was digging all the time. And at last, when the king was irritated and frustrated because the hermit was not giving any answer, so he said that if you have the answers, just tell it to me, and if you don't have, tell that to me also, because then I would be gone from here. Okay, let me know if you don't want to give me the answer of you, or if you don't have the answers. Tell that to me. I'll go. Right. So let's see what happens next. Here comes someone running, said the hermit. Let us see who it is. So while they were having this conversation, a man comes running towards them. The king turned around and saw a bearded man come running out of the wood. The man held his hand pressed against his stomach, and blood was flowing from under them. When he reached the king, he fell fainting on the ground, moaning feebly. The king and the hermit unfastened the man's clothing. There was a large wound in his stomach. The king washed it as best he could and bandaged it with his handkerchief and with a towel and the hermit had. But the blood would not stop flowing, and the king again and again removed the bandage soaked with warm blood and washed and again bandaged the wound. So now what happens? While they were having this conversation regarding the questions and the answers, there comes a man running from the woods. And what was the condition of the man? The man was badly wounded, he was badly injured, and the blood was oozing out from his stomach area. All right. And in order to stop the bleeding, he had put his hand over his stomach. And as soon as he reached the hermit and the king, the place where hermit and the king were standing, he fell on the ground, he fainted. All right. And the hermit and the king immediately started to nurse the man, the bearded man who had come from the forest. They unfastened his clothes, okay, untied his clothes, and in order to stop the bleeding, the king used the towel and handkerchief which the hermit had to stop the bleeding, right? Um, and but the blood was not the blood was running continuously, but and he had to change the towel again and again, and he had to bandage his wound again and again till the time the blood stopped coming out. All right. So we would do till here today. I hope you people have understood this much, right? We'll take up the next portion tomorrow. Thank you so much.